Welcome back to the IB Investor channel. Now this is the second video that I'm making about the portfolio. So we're gonna jump into that a little bit later in this video, but first some good news here. So the inflation in the USA actually dips here to 3.2%, which is very good. And we can see that it went down here from 4.2% in September and 7.1% here in March. So the highest level here in 40 years. Now, this was primarily driven here by energy prices that dropped here, so they fell 4.6% here in October, but also the food prices here fell slightly here by 0.2%. So this was really good news for many of the stock markets around the world here, and especially in Sweden, as you'll see in the next few minutes here. But very good news here, generally speaking, for investors, and also this gives some relief here for normal people as well, that things are becoming perhaps a little bit more affordable now going forwards. The S&P for the week, it still hasn't closed yet. There's about an hour left or something like this when I'm recording this video, but right now it is up about 2.65%, so quite strong here for the week here. And we can see here when the news came here in terms of the inflation news, then yeah, the stock market rallied here. And now for Nasdaq 100, so pretty much the same story here, where the stock market rallied here when the news came. So right now it's up 2.73%, and the market hasn't closed this week. It's still a few hours left here, but very strong growth here in the Nasdaq 100 as well. Now for the final index here, so OMXS 30, the Swedish index here, so the index was up 3.77, so almost 4% here for the week. And in Sweden, the market has closed here for some hours, so very strong week here in Sweden, which is good to see some recovery because we are lagging behind that of S&P 500, especially since that's probably the most comparable one, since we don't have a lot of tech companies here in Sweden, but certainly we're much behind the Nasdaq 100 here in comparison. So good to see some recovery here for the Swedish index as well here. Now for some positives here for our own currency here in Sweden. So our currency here became a little bit stronger compared to the US dollar. So we can see here at the bottom that the dollar weakened by 3.61% here versus the Swedish kroners. Now, this is not very good news if you hold or if you have a lot of exposure towards US dollars, then obviously this is bad news. But, as a regular guy in Sweden, it's pretty good that the Swedish currency is becoming a little bit stronger, because that could mean that, the inflation pressure that we've had could perhaps be a little bit relieved here, where many of the import goods that we're buying from other countries, such as oil, for example, could become cheaper if the Swedish kroners would become stronger here in the coming weeks and months. So pretty good news for most of the consumers here in Sweden. However, if you have exposure towards US dollars, this is obviously bad news for you. Now for some portfolio companies here, so Evolution, we have some insider buying here. So the CEO here bought about 100 million Swedish kroners worth of shares here. So here we have the share amount here and the share price. So very big insider buying here from him, which is very good to see. But we can also see here the some other executive here. He also purchased stock here for 860,000 kroners here, or about 10,000 shares here right now. So pretty good to see that insiders are buying into Evolution. But we can also see here that another company that I own, my second biggest holding, Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy here, that Bernard Arnault is continuing to purchase stock here. So he purchased some stock here on the 10th of November, but this was reported on the 16th of November, and we can see that he purchased for most people, a massive 13 million euros worth of stock here. But for him, of course, since he's a billionaire, these are quite small amounts, but still very good to see that insiders are buying. And for just some context here, I do own both of these companies, so for me, it's extra good to see that this is happening. Hexpool, one of my smaller holdings here, so they made an acquisition here in USA or North America, so in Chicago, Illinois, USA here. So it's a smaller acquisition here for 26.5 million US dollars, and on a cash and debt-free basis, and funded by a combination of cash on hand and existing bank facilities here. So we'll see in the next report here how exactly this was financed, but perhaps they're going to add some net debt here going forwards. But yeah, nothing else special about this acquisition. It's not a big one per se, I would say. Now from my portfolio development here in terms of kroners, so this is the biggest portfolio that I have. So it's currently situated at Avanza, one of the biggest brokers here in Sweden. So the value is almost 2.4 million Swedish kroners, which is good. It has picked up a little bit here as of late, which is good. And for the 1 week return, 2% up, but then again, like anything can happen in a week, and I'm not too bothered what's happening, on a week-to-week basis. But I know that maybe some of you guys are interested in this, so I'm just sharing it for you guys here. But on a personal note, I'm not trading stocks on a day-to-day basis or a minute basis or something like this. So, for me, it's pretty much pointless what happens in a week. But at least the portfolio here is up 2% here. I do have some additional portfolios that are smaller. So I do have some stocks that I have on Nordea. So it's another Swedish broker here in Sweden, or a bank. And I have some super small portfolio at a new brokerage firm called Leveler. I'm just trying it out because the prices on that platform is currently free if you're buying stocks. So I'm just trying it out, but it's a super small portfolio. I think it's like 3,000 kroners or something like this, so super small. But all in all, I have, I think, about 200,000 kroners pre-tax outside of this portfolio. So those are kind of meaningless in terms of size compared to this one. So this is probably the only one that I'm gonna show. But the difference is that in the Nordea portfolio, for example, I have most of my Evolution shares. So that portfolio is primarily, moving when Evolution is moving, and this portfolio barely has an Evolution stock. So that's the only difference that I would say in terms of like portfolio differences. So the Nordea portfolio is quite concentrated around Christian Dior, Evolution being the biggest, and Investor. And just for the gains and losses here for just 1 week, again, it's pretty nonsense information here, but at least you've seen it now. So AdTech here has done pretty well here, almost 12k kroners here in return, and Indutrade about 8k in BlackRock, 6k. But I also have some losers here. So we see Christian Dior, which is actually the second biggest holding in this portfolio, in the Avanza portfolio here. So pretty big movements here, even with small percentages for Christian Dior here. And then United Health Group that has gone down, and Caring. So what happened also, as I mentioned previously during this video, so the US dollars has weakened against the kroners. So that means that I have some losses here. I think the US dollars weakened by 3 to 4% or something like this during the week. So some of these losses, I'm not selling these, so these are just it's not trading losses either per se, but just value losses that haven't been realized. So most of this for this week at least is primarily because of the Swedish kroners here becoming stronger towards other currencies here, so the dollar and the euro here. So that's primarily why these companies are down in my portfolio, because I think that they have performed pretty well actually during this week. Now again, for some holding companies and serial acquirers, I own most of these, but just as a portfolio updates, these are the kind of stocks that I would like to own. So the only difference here is I don't currently own Constellation Software, and I currently don't own a lot of Teqnion. So I have a super small position here in Teqnion as a observation kind of holding, if you will. And Constellation Software, it's been on my radar for many years here, but still haven't pulled the trigger here because I've been too afraid of the, high valuations. But the stock just keeps on rising, so I just feel that I've kind of lost the rocket here, if you will. So but I still look for it. But what I really like and what I primarily own here are holding companies and serial acquirers, and I'm for some reason very fond of these companies. So for example here, Investor B is my largest holding here. So these numbers here are just the returns. As you can see, if you want to pause the video, you can see the kind of returns you could have gotten if you own these companies. And then Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, my second biggest holding, but I mostly own the Christian Dior variant here. So I think only 1/3 of the holding of the Louis Vuitton is actually the Louis Vuitton stock, but 2/3 of the capital here is within Christian Dior here, who owns Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy here. So it's a little bit tricky. Maybe I'll make a video about this in the future, but yeah, it is what it is. I do like these other serial acquirers here. So Lagercrantz, I own that one. Addtech, Brookfield. Brookfield is more of a holding company, but a spawner, as Mohnish Pabrai would probably call it. So they acquire companies, but they also spin off some companies, and they build up new companies. So they recently here acquired some companies to build up an insurance business unit here that they have grown pretty large here. And then, of course, we have Teqnion, Indutrade, and Lifco here, which are also serial acquirers. So these are the kind of companies that I look for in my portfolio to keep on adding when I see that the prices are good. But the only stocks here on this list that I don't really have is Constellation Software, and just a small portion here for Teqnion right now. And here you can see the top 10 holdings in my Avanza portfolio here. So this is not the total portfolio, but just the top 10 here at Avanza, one of the brokers here. So Investor B being the biggest one, but I do have more of Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy here. It just doesn't show, but I think it's 3% or something like this. So it's just below that of Investor B. But since I have both Investor B and Christian Dior in my Nordea portfolio, Investor B is still my largest holding here by far. But I do have more Christian Dior in the other portfolio, and I also own Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy stock here directly, but it doesn't show since it's not the top 10 here. But I think it's maybe top 15. I don't have it in front of me right now. Brookfield, quite big here. Blackstone. Blackstone is a asset manager here, so they manages assets or capital on behalf of other investors. So very light balance sheet here, which I like. So especially now in these kind of stress times, it's good to own a company that I believe in that has a pretty light balance sheet. But however, the assets that they are managing, those assets have tougher balance sheets, so to speak, since these are real asset managers. So basically they own a lot of real estate, for example, assets that you can touch basically. So but I think they're called secondaries, which is probably the more appropriate word here. Then Addtech here, I have some smaller portion of Addtech in the Nordea portfolio as well, but nothing meaningful. Again, another asset manager here, so Brookfield, and it's associated here by Brookfield. So these two are pretty much the same company here. So Brookfield owns 75% of Brookfield Asset Management. So this company here, it's 25% of the float, which is being traded right now. So, but I won't dwell on this too much. Kering, so this is another holding company. They own brands such as Gucci, for example, and Balenciaga, sorry. I probably killed the pronunciation here. I'm not so good with these brand names. I think they own Yves Laurent or something like this, but again, I'm super bad at pronouncing these French and Italian brands, so please forgive me. BlackRock, another asset manager. I think everybody knows them. Here's another holding company, so Lundberg so Swedish holding company here. So they own Industrivärden, they own some Indutrade and some other companies. Maybe I'll make a video about this in the future. And then another holding company here, Lifco, that I've already made a video about. So these are the top 10 right now that I have in my portfolio. So, they can fluctuate, but I don't trade so often. So they're probably going to be here, most of them in a year. But don't take this as any buying or selling advice or anything like that. That's just, information that these are the stocks that I'm currently holding in my portfolio right now at this current time of this video. Now, this was it for this video, for the second video of portfolio updates here. So, please hit the like button if you did like the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content here. Thanks for watching, and have a pleasant weekend. Bye.